Welcome to my Learn English YouTube channel. Before we begin today's session, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more valuable content like this.
Hey everyone, and welcome back. I'm so excited for today's deep dive because we're going to be talking about something I think we're all fascinated by: personality types.
Oh yeah, it's definitely one of those topics that just kind of grabs you.
It really does. And for this deep dive, we're using a YouTube video from English Pod called Boost Up Your English Skills, English Podcast Conversation, episode 23. Very catchy title.
Catchy and accurate because they have some really interesting vocabulary in there.
Yeah, they go way beyond just like nice or mean. They get into all those subtle shades of personality, which is what makes it so fascinating.
Definitely. And what I really liked about the video is they use this scenario of a teacher handing back personality test results.
Yeah, it's like a classic classroom scene. Makes you think back to like high school and those personality quizzes everyone would pass around.
Exactly. And of course, in real life, personality is way more complex than any test can capture.
Oh, for sure. It's not like you can just like check a few boxes and know everything about someone.
Right. But it gives us a good starting point to explore some of these descriptive words, which is great for anyone learning English too.
Okay, so let's jump into it. The first group of words the video highlights are adventurous, outgoing, and extroverted. They all kind of seem to go together, right? Like someone who's really comfortable in social situations.
Yeah, think of it this way. These are the people who gain energy from being around others. They love meeting new people, striking up conversations, being the center of attention.
Oh, yeah, totally. The life of the party type.
Exactly. Now, it's funny you say that because I actually know someone who everyone considers super outgoing, but they get really anxious before big social events.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah, it kind of messes with your idea of what extroverted means, doesn't it?
It does. Like maybe they're not actually extroverted, or maybe it's just more complicated than that.
That's the thing about these personality terms, right? They're not always black and white. Some people are just more comfortable in certain social settings than others.
I guess it's like maybe they recharge their batteries by being around people, but also need some alone time to decompress.
Exactly. It's all about finding that balance.
Okay, so moving on to something totally different. The video talks about superstitious. They give those classic examples of walking under ladders and opening umbrellas indoors.
Yeah, those are like universal superstitions, aren't they?
They really are, but it makes me wonder, where did these beliefs even come from? Are they all just silly old wives' tales?
Well, superstitions can definitely seem irrational, but they often tap into some pretty deep-seated anxieties.
Really?
Like, think about knocking on wood for good luck. It's like we're trying to ward off bad fortune.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean.
It's like a way of trying to control the uncontrollable.
So do you think superstitious people are just more anxious in general?
There could be a connection there. Some psychologists think that superstitious beliefs might come from a need for certainty in a world that often feels random and chaotic.
That makes sense. Okay, so let's contrast that with two other words from the video: naive and open-minded.
Oh, this is a good one.
Right. They use this hilarious example of someone who's so naive they think it's going to rain frogs.
Which, I mean, hey, stranger things have happened.
Haha, true. But you can definitely see how naivety can get you into trouble.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Naivety means you believe things too easily without questioning them.
Which is different from being open-minded, right?
Exactly. Being open-minded means you're willing to consider new ideas and different perspectives.
So like in the video, they talk about an open-minded girl you can talk to about anything.
Which to me sounds a little naive. I mean, you got to be careful who you trust with certain information.
Right. There's definitely a line between being open to new things and being too trusting.
So how can you tell the difference?
That's a good question.
I think a truly open-minded person is curious, but also skeptical. They don't just accept everything they hear at face value.
That's a good point. Okay, so then we have two words that are definitely not positive, but they're not quite insults either: reckless and clumsy.
Yeah, those are good ones too.
And I think we've all been there at some point, right?
Oh, absolutely. We've all had our clumsy moments.
The video gives the example of driving without a seatbelt as reckless behavior.
Which is definitely not something to be proud of.
And then there's the whole Butterfingers analogy for clumsiness, which is just too funny.
I know, right? Like you could just picture someone dropping everything they touch.
It's important to remember, though, that being reckless or clumsy doesn't necessarily make you a bad person.
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah.
They're just words that describe specific actions or tendencies.
Right. Like you could be a generally careful person, but have a moment of recklessness.
Or you could be super coordinated most of the time, but have a Butterfingers day where you drop everything.
Exactly. It's all about context.
Okay, ready for some more positive qualities?
Always.
The video talks about diligent, which is such a great word.
It is. It makes me think of someone who's super hardworking and dedicated.
Right. It's all about that strong work ethic.
In the video, they describe a diligent worker as someone you can always count on, someone who goes the extra mile.
And then there's magnanimous, which is like next level generosity.
Oh yeah, the video gives the example of someone donating half their salary to earthquake victims. Like, wow.
It's incredible, right?
So magnanimous is about being really selfless and putting the needs of others before your own.
Exactly. It's about going above and beyond what's expected, especially in times of need.
Okay, so we've talked about hard work. We've talked about generosity. Now let's talk about a skill I wish I had more of, being eloquent.
Ah, the gift of gab.
Right. The video mentions someone who can use big words effectively, which is impressive.
It is, but I think being eloquent is more than just having a big vocabulary.
Oh yeah, for sure. It's about using language in a way that's captivating and persuasive.
It's like being a really skilled public speaker, someone who can move people with their words.
Think about someone like Martin Luther King Jr. He was so eloquent and inspiring.
Exactly. His words had such power. Okay, last word for this section, daring.
Now that one can be good or bad depending on the situation, right?
It definitely depends on the context. Daring implies a willingness to take risks, but those risks can be calculated or completely reckless.
So a successful entrepreneur might be considered daring because they're willing to take risks in their business.
But someone who's constantly doing dangerous things without thinking of the consequences, that's not really daring, it's just foolish.
I see what you mean. It's like, is the risk worth the potential reward? And are you taking the necessary precautions?
Exactly. It all comes down to the intention and the outcome.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. We've got adventurous, outgoing, superstitious, naive, open-minded, reckless, clumsy, diligent, magnanimous, eloquent, and daring.
That's quite a range.
Yes.
And we're just getting started.
Before we move on, though, I want to focus on one particular personality type that often gets a lot of attention.
And not always in a good way.
Exactly. I'm talking about the dreaded type A personality.
Yeah, boy. Yeah. Those are the folks who are always on the go, super intense.
Yeah, like they're running on high speed all the time.
Let's dive into that next.
So the type A personality, I feel like everyone knows someone who fits that description.
Right. It's like that classic image of someone who's always on the go, super driven, maybe a little too intense at times.
Yeah, like they just can't slow down. But the video also points out that this drive for achievement can come with some downsides.
Definitely. They mentioned that type A individuals can be prone to anxiety and have a real need for control.
Which makes sense. If you're always pushing yourself to succeed, it's got to create some stress, right?
It's like they have this internal motor that's always running.
And sometimes that motor can backfire.
Well, not always. But the video does say that type A folks aren't known for being the best listeners.
Oh, yeah. I can see that they're so focused on their own goals and to-do lists that it's hard to really tune in to what others are saying.
And that need for control can sometimes come across as a bit, well, controlling.
So it's like a double-edged sword. These qualities that can drive success can also create some interpersonal challenges.
It's all about balance, right? Like you need a certain level of ambition and drive to achieve big things.
But if you're constantly pushing everyone around you and never taking time to relax, well, that's not going to lead to a very happy or fulfilling life.
Exactly. And that's why self-awareness is so important. If you know you tend towards those type A tendencies, you can work on managing them.
Like finding healthy ways to de-stress and learning to be a better listener.
Exactly. It's about harnessing those strengths without letting them control you.
Okay, so it's not that being a type A is inherently bad. It's about being aware of those potential pitfalls and finding ways to mitigate them.
Right. Think about someone like Steve Jobs, a classic example of a type A personality.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
He was known for being brilliant, but also really demanding.
Exactly. His drive and intensity led to incredible innovation, but it also created a lot of tension and conflict.
So it's about finding that sweet spot where you can use those qualities to achieve amazing things without burning yourself or others out in the process.
I think that's a great takeaway from this whole discussion. It's not just about labeling people as a certain type. It's about understanding the nuances of personality.
And how those traits can play out in different situations.
Right. It's like we've been given this new set of lenses to view the world through.
And instead of making snap judgments, we can appreciate the complexity of human nature.
Because ultimately, it's that understanding that allows us to connect with each other on a deeper level.
So instead of just thinking, oh, that person is so type A, we can try to understand what's driving their behavior.
Maybe they're afraid of failure or they feel a lot of pressure to succeed.
Exactly. It's about moving beyond those surface level labels and really trying to see the person behind the personality.
And that's what makes this whole topic so fascinating, isn't it?
It really is. It's like we've been given the secret decoder ring for human behavior.
And now we can use it to decode not only the people around us, but also ourselves.
Which is a perfect segue into our final thought for today. So as we wrap up this deep dive into personality, I can't help but think about all those words we've discussed.
Yeah, it was quite a list, wasn't it?
It was. Makes you realize just how many different ways there are to describe someone.
Exactly.
So I'm curious which of these words resonate with you. Do you see yourself as more like the adventurous type or maybe the diligent one?
It's a good question, isn't it?
I feel like I'm kind of a mix, a bit open-minded, maybe a little clumsy sometimes.
Uh-huh. Well, who isn't a little clumsy now and then?
That's true. But I think it's so valuable to take a step back and really think about our own personalities.
Oh, for sure. It's like that old saying, know thyself.
Exactly. It's like a superpower, isn't it? Being able to understand not just ourselves, but also the people around us.
I love that way of putting it. A superpower. It makes understanding personality seem so much more exciting.
Right, because it kind of is exciting. Like once you start paying attention to these things, it's like you unlock this whole new level of human interaction.
I totally agree. And it's not about putting people into neat little boxes.
Oh, no, definitely not.
It's about appreciating that we're all different and that those differences are what make us so interesting.
It's about embracing that complexity.
Why do you think that's so important? Understanding those differences.
Well, for me, it's about building better relationships. When you understand where someone's coming from, you can communicate with them more effectively.
That's such a good point. It's about recognizing that we all have different perspectives, different motivations.
And instead of judging those differences, we can celebrate them, learn from them.
I love that. Because in the end, we're all just trying to navigate this crazy thing called life, right?
We are, and having that empathy, that understanding, it just makes the journey so much more enjoyable.
And it opens us up to so many new possibilities.
It does. It's like this whole world just expands.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I have a little challenge for our listeners.
Oh, I love a good challenge. What is it?
I want everyone to pay closer attention to the people around them. Observe their words, their actions, their motivations.
Like become amateur personality detectives.
Exactly. Because you never know what you might discover.
And maybe even apply some of these words we've learned.
And don't forget, the journey of self-discovery is ongoing. We're constantly evolving.
That's so true. So on that note, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of personality types.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and most importantly, keep connecting.